And Mr. Green, just go ahead and do the B, interim budget resolution, fiscal year 2022.
Sure, I'll go through all of
Yeah,
them.
just go through it.
All right, the packet that I've given you here, there's actually going to be two. The first packet are budget amendments that we typically have during the fiscal year, where we may have changes in revenue or new grants. We focus on funds and the PRC, which is Program Reporting Code. So these are typical budget amendments that I've needed to make since our last board meeting. So we'll go to first page there. This is a budget amendment to the State Public School Fund. This is PRC 130, state textbooks. We received an additional $7,304, and we plan to use that for state textbooks. Fortunately, this is one of the few program reporting codes within the state fund that we get to carry over. So it's a late amendment. We just got the allotment within the last 30 days, but we do get to carry this over and use it next year.
So this is carryover?
We can carry it over, yes. Yes. And we're not going to make any expenditures today, so we will carry it over. Next page, this is a budget amendment to the local current expense fund. Actually, if you look under the code number column, the third section there, you'll see the program reporting code number, which is 835. That's timber receipts. If you look in the credit column, scan down, the increase in the revenue is $87,425.97. At the beginning of the year, I budget conservatively $40,000 each year, because we never know how much those timber receipts are going to be when we receive them during the year. And we received those last week. So the total of the timber receipts this year is $127,425.97. And you can just scan through those expenditure line items there. I'm not going to go over those in detail. We'll have those, majority of those items spent when our payables come in. We do have payables. These are invoices that are incurred in May or June, but the invoices may not show up until July. So we have to book those, we have to take those back into June. Those are called payables when we receive them after the end of the fiscal year. So these funds, majority of these will be expended when we use these for payables. Next page, this is a budget amendment for the federal fund. This is PRC 165. This is ESSER F funds. It's for digital K-8 funds. Federal funds, most of them are allowed for carryover. We received $7,991, and we will carry these funds over and spend them between July 1 and September 30th. Christie's already got some invoices to expend these funds, but we plan to use the majority of that for computer software and supplies. Next page, this is also a budget amendment to the federal fund. This is for PRC 171. This is ESSER 2 funds. These funds can be used until the end of fiscal year 2023. You can see in the credit column there, the amount of this allotment is $1,250,753. And there are a lot of line items there. It's a lot of money, and there are a lot of ways that we can spend those funds. But over the next 2 years, these are what we intend to spend these funds on, but I'm sure that there will be changes within a 2-year period on how we actually need to use these funds. We've got some line items there. We've got math coaches, we've got workshop expense, supplies and materials, non-capitalized equipment, extended contracts. That's line items that we've been using to pay personnel for summer school, which is required by House Bill 82. Some other line items, you got contract services in there, math, mental health liaison. So just keep scanning through that. If you've got any questions about any of those individual line items, just let me know. next page, this is also a budget amendment to the federal fund. If you'll notice in the credit column, there's no entry there. It's because it's continued to the next page. You'll flip to the next page, the credit column. You'll see the amount. This is Prc009. These funds are ESSER 3 funds. We can use these funds until the end of fiscal year 24. The total there is $2,801,834,000. And you notice that a lot of these line items that we budget these funds for are similar to the ESSER 2 funds that you just looked at. Some of the additional items, we've got non-capitalized equipment there for $400,000, contracted services for HVAC for $300,000. There's two that I want to point out. Part of these ESSER 3 funds we can use for clean and safe air, so we can use to upgrade some of our HVAC systems. There's also a line item in there for an activity bus. Any questions about that budget? Okay, the last budget amendment, actually the next page, this budget amendment is to Fund 8, where we account for our grants. This is Prc008 Impact Aid. If you'll remember, at the beginning of the year, what I do is I budget $600,000 for Impact Aid. But that revenue is made up from three sources. The first one is for the federally owned property in the county. That does not change. The second one, if you'll see there, the description of code, if you'll look at the second line item, it's revenue for Impact Aid section 7003B. That's for the students that are federally connected in our county. The actual revenue that we received, if you look over in the credit column, was $50,458 greater than what I budgeted. So I increased that revenue there. The next line item
You
down.
said you increased that revenue?
I did increase.
It did increase?
It did increase, yes.
By how much?
$50,458.
Oh, that's how much you increased by?
Yes. Now, the next line item down, the revenue there, Impact Aid section 7003D. That's revenue for children with disabilities. There are certain students with children with disabilities who are federally connected as well, and that number of students dropped last year. So the revenue also drops, and it dropped by $12,985. So the net effect of an increase in one revenue and a decrease in another revenue would be your first line item there. The net effect is an increase of $37,473, and I've got that budgeted in instructional support for guidance services. Okay. And the last page, this is also a budget amendments to Fund 8. First section there is Prc652 Cherokee Preservation Grant. This is actually for the Graham County Schools Indian Education Summer Camp. These funds come from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and the amount of revenue there, the allotment we've given is $10,000. We plan to use $5,400 for contracted instructors, $1,000 for trips, field trips and activities, and $3,600 for supplies and snacks. And those funds will not only be used in June, but we'll also carry those over and use them in July. Next section down, this is Prc574, Karo's Welcome Grant. These are funds that we received several years ago, and they will allow us to carry those over for for 3 to 4 years. The amount of funds that we use this year for this grant is $15,575. As you can read through the different line items there, how we've spent those funds. This is a grant, the program director is Ben Davis. There are some senior mentors that we pay in this grant that also mentor some of the younger students. They have science experience, they have field trips, but if you have any more detailed questions, just give them Davis a call and give you some detail on this grant.
Is that it?
That's it for these types of budgeting.
Do I have a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented by Mr. Green? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
Now I have more budget amendments. Okay, now as I mentioned earlier, the previous budget amendments were typical budget amendments that we did during the year that focused on each individual fund and focused on the program reporting code. These budget amendments are as a requirement for the North Carolina General Statutes. I'm going to say this a couple of times. This general statute requires, if you'll look on the first page there under the code number column, you'll see in that budget code, the second section is a 4-digit purpose code. During the year, we focus on budget amendments for each fund and budget amendments for the PRC, which is the third section. But North Carolina general requirements or general statutes require that at the end of the year, based on purpose code, none of our actual expenditures exceed our budget expenditures based on this purpose code. We don't focus on that all year, but we have to make budget amendments at the end of the year so there are no overages based on purpose code. Now, these budget amendments do not affect any actual expenditures or actual revenues. The only thing I'm doing is making budget amendments to reallocate budget expenditures based on this 4-digit purpose code, okay? So let me go over the first page in detail. First section there is Prc009 Longevity. You'll look in the credit column there, you'll see the amount of longevity that's paid in Fund 1, Prc009, for staff members who are fully or partially paid in this, by state funds. The longevity that they earned, including matching benefits, is $120,354.34. Now, we always do a budget amendment, or I always do a budget amendment at the end of the year, because we never know how much this longevity is going to be. You can't take every person in the school system and take their years of 3 years of service, calculate their gross salary by whatever percentage it may be, whether it's 10 years, 15 years, 20, etc. So what we do is we make those expenditures during the year, and after the final payroll, then I do a budget amendment that matches the actual expenditures. So that's the reason for this budget amendment. Next section down, this is PRC 45 bonus pay. The amount of bonuses that we have paid. This is a bonus that could be given to principals, assistant principals, or teachers. It's based on testing results, growth results, things of that nature. Those budget or those bonuses that have been paid during the year are $39,184.98. It does not count toward their retirement. That is a state legislative bonus. It's not subject to retirement.
What are some of the things, test scores, what?
Test scores and growth. Right, we've met growth. Now, I'm a finance officer.
I know.
If you want to, maybe Mr. Moody can expand on that, different types of growth that can be met to earn these bonuses.
Can probably, but he says he's more curriculum.
Sure, yeah.
And that's fine, I mean, I knew that was there, but I know it is, but I know we mentioned growth, we mentioned meeting your, I was just wondering if there was more. I understand what you mentioned, I just wondered if there was more.
Okay. Now, the The rest of these budget amendments, I'm not gonna go over in detail, but I am gonna go to, if you'll flip to the budget amendment that actually has capital outlay fund on the third line. I'm gonna explain these budget amendments with something here that's very simple without having to go into detail in all of these budget amendments. Now, during the year, or at the beginning of the year, we budgeted $100,000 for an activity bus. We didn't purchase an activity bus, but during the year, we did purchase a food truck for $64,000. Now, as you'll see in the budget code there, those two items have different purpose codes. Look at that 4-digit purpose code.
All right, now which page are you on now? You've lost it.
It's the budget code, or the budget amendment that has capital outlay fund on the third part of the head. It's the third line of the head.
Right there it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only got 2 entries there.
I see.
Did you say 64? It says 60. You're gonna explain.
I am. Okay, again, at the beginning of the year, we budgeted $100,000 for an activity bus, which we did not purchase, but we did purchase a food truck for $64,000. Now, based on these North Carolina general statutes that require that our actual expenditures do not exceed our budget expenditures, based on this purpose code, I'm required to make this budget amendment. Okay? The food truck, if I don't make this budget amendment, then we've got a negative or an overage. Purpose code 9303. Look at your budget code there. Okay? So we spent the money in purpose code 9300, okay, when there wasn't anything budgeted there, okay, and we're out of compliance based on this North Carolina general statute. I'm going to say this one more time. Our actual expenditures cannot exceed our budget expenditures based on purpose code, okay? So I'm making all these budget amendments so that we don't have any overages, okay, based on purpose code. All right? All of these budget amendments after page 1 meet that requirement. Okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand out several pages here for each of you to look at. Yeah. I think you guys can look at that together. This is a report. Each individual page is for one fund. Ms. Davis, you have Fund 1, which is State Public School Fund. Ms. Mott, you have Fund 2, which is the current expense fund. You'll see that at the bottom of your far left column. So Fund 2. All right. This report is segregated by purpose code. Subtotal by purpose code. You'll see 5100, 5200, 5300, etc. All right. If you will look, each of you, in the far right column where it says unencumbered balance. I already know the answer to this, but you will not find a negative in any of those columns in the far right. And these budget amendments that I've made have corrected any negatives that we had last week or earlier this week. So the budget amendments that I'm making, there's several pages here, accomplish that goal, but there are no, our actual expenditures do not exceed our budget expenditures based on purpose code. Any questions about that?
I don't think I'm on that page.
Yeah, we only do it one time a year, and Ms. Mott and Mr. Allison, this is new to you, and I mean, it's even kind of new to the other board members because I don't see it once a year, but that's a requirement.
So if it comes up negative in any purpose code, he has to balance it out. He can't show the state that there's a negative at the end of the year. So just balancing things out.
Yeah, all we're doing is reallocating budgeted expenditures so we have that income space on first. That's as simple as I can.
Reallocating what would you say?
I'm reallocating budgeted expenditures. Budget.
Can I have an example?
I just gave you one with that activity bus
Okay, yeah, we do that.
and the food truck. So we were, you know, without this budget amendment, we were over budget by $64,000 on that purchase code for the food truck. Because we didn't budget anything at the beginning of the year for the food truck. So we're just reallocating the money that we budgeted for the activity bus for the food truck. That's in local, and we're making expenditures out of that in local. Those are small ticket items. This is a capital
I
outlay
realize,
fund.
I realize.
Yeah, yeah. Any questions about the year-end budget? Okay. And what I have now is a resolution for interim budget. Just to let you read this. And I'm not going to read the entire resolution, but the purpose for this is to adopt an interim budget going into fiscal year 22. Because at this point, we have no allotments from the state. We can't adopt a budget on June 30th, which is required. Okay, so we adopt an interim budget until we receive those allotments. Currently, we have developed our local budget, our capital outlay budget. We're sending in some federal budgets, but the state allotments have not arrived. So that forces us to adopt an interim budget until those allotments come in, and I can develop the uniform budget, which the uniform budget has all funds within that budget. Okay. This resolution also states that we will operate going forward at the same level of expenditures as the expenditures we had in the year we're getting ready to close. Well, the state allotments usually don't come in until we did not. We did not receive the amounts that we requested. We received in the county budget, their appropriation for local current expense fund is $1 million.
What did we request, you told me?
We requested $1,080,000.
Okay. I would request more than we thought we would request. I would request $1,030,000.
Well, it was $1,080,000 because we increased the budget 5%, that's $50,000. And then we increased it another $30,000 for the staff appreciation request. So we increased it by $50,000. Just because cost of living.
I don't know, I guess I just must have missed that in one thing. I thought we would just increase it 5,000. I did get 30,000, but did we?
Well, the budget I presented to the board was $1,080,000, and that's what you approved, and that's what we sent to the
Okay, I
county.
just missed that, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, we thought it was appropriate to add 5%. You know, you don't ask, you won't receive. So, costs are going up, utilities especially, so we thought it was appropriate to ask for an increase of 5% from the county plus the $30,000 for the staff appreciation. But anyway, this is a resolution to adopt an interim budget going forward until I get all the allotments and develop and present the uniform budget, which contains all funds under the school system.
So the rest of these budget amendments, you're not gonna go over?
No, those budget amendments, like I said, accomplish that goal,
Okay.
of meeting those. You can scan through those, we can stand here, you can scan through those, I've got them right in front of me if you've got any questions.
Do I have a motion to accept the budget amendments to the state public school fund as presented by Mr. Green? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Go ahead. That was the interim budget, right?
That was the budget amendments that were herein, but we have to adopt the resolution for an interim budget.
Oh, so I need to do that, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution for an interim budget for fiscal year 2021-22?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Now, I need to sign mine, right?
I've got one that's already partially signed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Are you done?
I'm done. What are you doing?
Okay.
That's usually my longest presentation of the year.
Stick a fork in. All right, C, personnel, Mr. Moody.
Yes, I have several personnel that need to be voted on and approved. I guess I'm ready for closed session. A couple other things that we'll just approve policies for the upcoming school year. And also, it's not on the agenda, the board wants to be updated on some facility issues or not.
Yeah, how's the gym looking?
Jim, that's one thing we'll talk about tomorrow, meeting with engineer. He's coming back, structural engineer, to look. We've dug up around the footers, and we took some brick out. As you know, the brick on the walls does not have a cinder blocks in between it, so we're gonna look at it tomorrow. And from that, he's gonna devise a plan on how to fix the walls. Right now, it's either, looks like there's a slight possibility we can erase them. The other scenario is bring them down and put a metal siding through, because they do not provide structural support the beams do. So we'll have more conclusive answers to that hopefully after he comes and looks at it. Right now, the sinkholes not really caught. There's no sinkholes. Looks like the floor did expand. Why all of a sudden, 54 years, it's still a mystery, but once they cut it back, it laid down, and it seems to be taking, even the walls even came in some after we cut the strips out off either side. The bleachers weren't put in right either, so that might have contributed some to it. But, that's good news. And also during the closed session, I'm going to get some, might lead to some other things as far as the rest of the facilities that we use. Elementary also. We had an RMS construction meeting yesterday. Everything, for the most part, is on schedule. Looks great. Get a chance to look at it. It's amazing how well they're progressing there. Also, with the ESSER funds, just want you to know that we're coming also tomorrow. If you guys flying from Oregon to measure out where everyone to redo the auditorium. The seats have not been done, my understanding, since day one. What has been done to it with Mr. Carriage, who was superintendent, we did some talking back then, and the big curtain, which I think was several $1,000s to do it, but the seats are in pretty bad shape. So we're going to redo the seats, and then build 98 seats with desks in it, so it's used for classroom. Put some lighting in the middle, so see better in there, and recarpet it. And again, first and foremost is to spread out and use for classrooms, but then two, it's something that the whole community uses. It's probably used more than anything else, I would dare say. So that's going to be started. We look at that tomorrow. We put the PO in, and hopefully by this fall, it's going to be redone. So just want to let y'all know that. I think that's a good. That's all for our kids.
Absolutely.
So that's the three. That's the three things. Unless y'all got any other questions.
That's encouraging about the gym.
Yeah, I think Lester's also started a process on our insurance. So hopefully, it's not going to cost us any money, other than, can you correct me if I'm wrong, Lester, other than our deductible, which I think Lester said he'd pay for that, so.
Budget amendment, just kidding.
Thank you. He's a good fellow. So it's looking good, especially not to get this over my head, but especially if you think they can save the walls, hopefully we get it resolved and get something up before school starts. If not, we'll just go from there, but at least it's not going to be ridiculous.
So they're thinking that the floor is, all right, it's just a wall.
Yeah, because like I said, when when that started expanding, pushed it out, and you should have seen it when I don't know how many saw blades they had. It's so funny because the guy that did the floors name's Mullet, Reginald Erickson, and he's got up there. Of course, he seemed to know more about it than the engineers did, and he said he knew off backwards on them, and he run several saws cutting it back. It's that tight against those walls. And even under, we had these spring-loaded metal clips under it because it's a float floor. It was even pushing them through the brick. It was so tight. And when it finally got to the point where it pushed the walls away from the foundation, there's about 2 or 3 inch gap in between now the foundation and the walls. We think that's when the moisture just rushed in and really started expanding. And we spent $10,000 in bringing commercial dehumidifiers in, and it didn't do much. But when we took the bleachers back and seen where the real problem is, we bought, instead of keep doing commercial, we bought our own dehumidifiers. They would take that 6, 7, 8 times more water than they did, just regular dehumidifiers. So that's what we feel is.
Mr. Moody, I went to the commissioners meeting, and Joseph Green, I made a report, and he was talking about, best I could hear, the terrible place down there, that did they make an evaluation or a final evaluation that underneath that it was wet, very wet?
Oh, yes, the soil samples around it, and of course, we know when we did a football field a few years ago, there used to be a creek under there, had to be. And of course, all the runoff goes in there, but again, whoever did the downspouts, pushed the downspouts straight to the ground, and dug holes and put gravel in it. So whatever water came off the downspouts, the ground just sucked up. So we rerouted that and going to fix it better. But yes, there's artesian wells, springs all around there. Anyway, if the science building has a pump in the basement, has some waste cover in it. If that pump runs out, their basement floods. So there's water in this whole area.
So that was accurate.
In the sonar, they did that. Did it find the sinkhole?
No, they didn't. They said, everybody's recommendation said we're wasting our time and money, which we've done $10,000 in the sonar. Said if you did find anything, we'd have to rip up the whole floor just to do that. That'd be another $125,000.
Yeah.
And everybody said, and it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. And which they said really, everybody's conclusion was it was the floor separating what's causing it like it was. So we do have a general idea of what it is, what's causing it, how to fix it. Tomorrow we're going to have a better idea from the structural engineer who's working on the middle school, so to kind of look at it and He's got all, you know, we did the sonar on the walls and sonar on the ground around it. We'll have all those reports, and whatever he decides to do, we're gonna get him to sign off on it, before we proceed, to make sure it's real structurally safe, whatever we do, same before we proceed.
Okay, beginning teacher support plan. Mr. Moody, do you have that?
Yes, it's any sort of your board packets, if you look at, it's basically the same as, last year, and then, of course, we'll have, I don't know if it needs to be voted on, or I do know you need to sign.
I think we have to.
Okay, so that will be something, I guess we'll talk about too during closed session, we'll get a vote on it, and we'll get back out.
Okay. Of course, this was in our packet that they sent to us at home.
Yes.
I've already read it.
Yes, so, I guess, any question about this? Like I
Yes.
said, it's the same thing, it's the same as last year.
I did not realize retired teachers could be mentored, but
Yeah.
Yes.
School-based mental health initiative.
Okay, in the fall, and this is what we use part of the extra money as well, because we use coming, one of the big, things we look forward to is the mental health, issues we're gonna be faced with once kids and teachers come back full-time. So they wanted a mental health plan and wanted it in place in 2 or 3 months, and the board approved by July 1st, and then, if I'm not mistaken, Ellen, right, sent off to the state by September. So we enlisted Letitia, who's our mental health and human resources person, and then we hired Gabrielle Pringle as our mental health liaison, who was wonderful. Sit down and we've come up with this plan, which you had in your packets as well, and we do have a plan to help combat and help with what we've been facing. We're already looking at mental health workshops and things to do to help our teachers face this. Not to put it on them, they've already got enough on their plate, and that's the whole point. We're trying to walk this fine line, not to put them as mental health instructors. The state almost wants that, and that's not fair to them, nor fair to the child. So we're coming up with plans to help with whatever we may face, to get kids and more teachers, but they help in this country. So, but right now, we see the plan approved, and we're gonna go forward with what we need to do to make sure we have things in place to help kids who may be facing mental health issues, and maybe even teachers. I think they're struggling too. So it is a concern not only here, but statewide. So that'll be approved as well.
Yeah, we need to approve it now.
You can vote on that.
Did you say yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the school-based mental health initiative plan?
so
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Now, what about the beginning teacher support plan?
You can go ahead and, if everybody's fine with it, go ahead, you would.
Do I have a motion to approve the beginning teacher support plan? We've done this, year after year after year, so it's the same thing. Do I have a motion to approve that? No. Okay. Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Moody, the TSI written plan, is Tanya and Jamie going to do that?
No, but Christy is, she's out there. I'll send it, pass these out to y'all. Here's the plan. Christy, is this something that needs to be signed off on, or they just need to be aware of it?
it just has to be approved.
That's a good one. Ellen, do you have a copy of this?
I think I do.
Rob, you have that tire, please?
Well, these are all the same.
No, well, one's for middle school and one's for elementary.
Is that both of them?
Yeah, just,
Davis, you'll give that to Miss Davis. Thank you. Come in, Christie.
What you have in front of you is a plan of action that, this was the result of the consolidated audit that we had for all of our federal programs. There was 2 findings outcomes for that population of students, looking at proficiency and growth. This has been, most schools around our end are also, we're in the same boat. As you know, it's difficult sometimes to see, to get those students to proficiency, but anyway, what they wanted to see was this more included in their NC STAR improvement plan. And so what they were required to do is do an action plan of how they would address this. And this is their plan for the elementary school. Basically, they said that they would revise their NC school improvement plan to show what the indicators and goals were for students with learning disabilities. And they would show where they meet, their minutes of their meetings and their agendas. And they would improve their, specifically their professional development for their regular education teachers in the area of teaching students with disabilities. You'll see that toward the bottom. I'm looking at Robbinsville Elementary now. They're going to be attending a lot of training for learning more about dyslexia and reading. They're going to be adapting their master schedule to support the academic tiers, support for students who are at risk or have some kind of academic delay, and also looking and targeting more behavioral support. For the middle school, it was the same. They will look at their NC STAR school improvement plan in that, make sure that they address and document their meetings of the meetings, and how they are addressing those goals for specifically for students with disabilities in those areas. And they will look at improving the student outcomes. They're also using IXL at the middle school to more of a diagnostic to see where kids are and what areas of need they have. So, any questions about that? We submitted this plan back to the auditors, and they've accepted it and are good with it. But part of that was to have it approved by the board.
Anybody have any questions? Well, it says by June 30th, 2021, we need to approve this. So
Yes.
do I have a motion to approve the TSI written plan as presented by Ms. Cable, to approve the action plan and an assurance statement with these created protocols and specific steps? Do I have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Cable. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Davis, board policy.
All right. You have a folder in front of you with the board policies. Policy 1320, Title I, Parent and Family Engagement. In this policy, your last revision was in 2017, and so basically from that time, there were some federal changes in the Title I program of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And then we also have the Every Student Succeed Act. So what this policy does is summarizes the federal legal requirements under the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. We've had so many, we had ESSA for money for COVID, but ESSA is Every Student Succeeds Act. So as you go through, with the policy, I believe the school is in compliance, and I haven't talked to Angie on this one, but they keep an evidence-based strategy in place to support family and family involvement with the school. And I believe we have that in place. And we also have a parent committee in place. So if you when you review this policy, just know that it generally comes in compliance, or it does come in compliance with bringing this policy forward for 2017 for the new federal legal requirements for every student succeeds. And we went over every student succeeds in one of our board trainings. Okay, policy 1510, school safety. The last time it was amended was 2018, so since that time we've had the pandemic. And what it states is that there are temporary requirements to prevent COVID spreading particularly, but any other variant or pandemic that the Department of Health and Human Services determines is applicable to schools. So the amendments in this policy are in place while we have the pandemic and to respond whenever the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services determines that schools need to respond with policy. So that we'll agree to that, which basically is the amendments to this policy says.
And that, you look at one thing for me when you get a chance concerning school safety is how they want us practice and procedures, the school drills as far as lockdowns and school evacuations. That used to be a mandatory thing. But I know now, if they still want us to do that, it's COVID restrictions, does it?
I think what it will be coming out of the General Assembly this month, early July, will answer that in terms of if decisions are returned to the local board for how to gather in school, how many students, mask requirements, vaccination. As long as you can comport with that, then you need to keep your.
Because, you know, the drills, you're putting all the kids in one corner, and then you're packing them all on buses to practice the evacuation drills. That's just what I was wondering, because, you know, they did it last year. That's just questions I have.
Okay. I think this will address that, but I think what's coming down the General Assembly will be helpful. And it's on the calendar today, and whether it's voted on today, but it'll be soon. Policy 2302, remote participation in board meetings. It's always been permitted, but it's never been utilized that much until the last year and a half or so. And what this policy states is there are more reminders in here about when you conduct remote meetings that you actually do voice voting. There's no hand raising. All votes have to be heard. Everything has to be heard. And everything has to be announced. Like, here's a document. You can no longer say you're looking at it. You need to say what it is, attachment to agenda, policy changes, minutes, da, 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 da. So this is more of a reminder that as remote participation in board meetings continues, that everything must be loud and clear. For example, when your chair asks for a vote, you all raise your hand, that's not permitted. Just keep in mind if you do remote meetings. And you all haven't really done remote meetings. I've been involved with some boards that are doing, that's what they did all last year was remote meetings. So this is a reminder that you have to act a little differently, and you have to have a reason for your remote meeting. And then if you go to D,
Can I go back to C?
okay.
Okay, it says a member may attend a meeting and participate in board deliberations and decisions remotely. Remote participation prevent participating in the meeting due to those things. So in other words, if I couldn't be here, I could remote in.
If you could not be here, right.
That's what this is saying, correct?
Which one are you on?
The one we were here.
No, I mean, which, I'm on A,
I'm on C.
okay. B, I didn't hear everything you said. Okay, C, procedures for remote participation. Okay,
Is this it?
yeah. If you follow the procedures, but keep in mind, before you jump to, C, you need to read A. It has to be for a reason, a personal illness or disability, and you have to notify the chair and the superintendent and have one of those reasons.
Okay.
And that's again a reminder, this policy that you're required to meet in person.
Is that gonna
And
be
you're
hard to do?
acknowledging,
Pardon me?
Is that gonna be hard to do? Would that be hard for me to do?
Sure. Depends on how you want to do it, I mean, a phone or.
Okay,
We've done it before.
okay.
but the board's policy is still that it's essential for members to attend the meeting in order to perform their official duties. So, I mean, it's still the old policy that attendance is essential. But if you have, under A, some of these exceptions, then you do C. All right, that's 2302. 2310 is public participation in board meetings. This is, the last update I did was 2009. So, before our next board meeting, be sure to review this in detail. I think it's important because, it addresses your public comment and the changes that it has made there. That essentially your policy still says that the Board of Education meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. The public is cordially invited to attend board meetings and to observe the board as it conducts its official business. To establish and promote a policy for citizens to appear before the board at the regularly scheduled monthly meeting, the board provides for public comment, and that's pursuant to 115C51. And if you'll go to the last page of the policy in front of you, what I have prepared is a public comment handout. So when you adopt this policy, which is not only 115C51, but it's also 115C36.
This is what they did, right? This is what they did.
I took 115C51, 36, and 143, 318.10, and 318.17, and took those statutes, which is this policy, and then put it in, you know, taking all those statutes and the 3-page policy and making it 1 page for everyone to understand. But the public comment portion of the meeting is designated on the agenda. Each speaker must be recognized by the chairman as having the exclusive right to be heard. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. A speaker cannot give the allotted minutes to another speaker in order to increase the other person's allotted time. 3 participants on the same subject are permitted. It is recommended that a group of people who wish to speak on the same subject designate one person to speak for all. The time allotted for each session of public comment is no more than 30 minutes. That's what the statute used to say no more than 15 minutes, so that's changed. It's no more than 30 minutes. You don't have to do 30 minutes. Before, it was no more than 15 minutes before the board would have to choose to extend the time for public comment by a majority vote. So the majority vote doesn't kick in until the public comment gets beyond 30 minutes. For clarification purposes only, the board may ask the speaker questions. And this is very important. The board will not discuss or take action at the same meeting on an item that is presented during public comment. Because you don't act as individuals, you act as a board, so you need an opportunity to discuss it. There's always an exception, and that's in case there's an emergency. You can't, the chair can, and the chair, can have the speaker refrain from specific employees and other confidential matters. And then all speakers must conduct themselves with decorum and civility without profanity or accusatory language. Speakers must comply with these guidelines. The chairman has authority to stop the speaker if the speaker does not follow these guidelines. So, and if you have any other questions after you read those, and we'll address them. Disruption of a public meeting is a class 2 misdemeanor. That's under B in the policy. It's in front of you. If you would all review that carefully before our next meeting. Then on policy 4125, homeless students, Christy Cable is the homeless liaison, and that's what this policy requires.
It's Letitia.
Oh, it's Letitia. That's it. Okay. You told me that, and I just forgot to change it here, so it's Letitia. And you've always had the liaison person designated, so that's not an issue. And the changes in this policy, and I'll get it to Letitia, have to do with the North Carolina State Plan for Educating Homeless Children. And it's expanded the definition of homeless children. And schools have to be actively seeking out homeless children. And your liaison is to work with other agencies in the community to find out if they're living in hotels, any abandoned buildings, transitional. But the definition, and that's under A, has been expanded. So I'll go over that with Letitia, if there's the program is actively seeking under this expanded definition. And then there were some changes to the dispute resolution if you're planning for the homeless student. Whoever the guardian is, the identified person with that student has an opportunity to talk to the superintendent and the board about whether that's an appropriate program for that transient student. That's been quite expanded, and that begins under D in the policy. Okay, and the last one is 5030, community use of facilities. And again, the last revisions you did to this policy were 2018. If you go to the very end, page 6, page 7. Page 6 is the waiver of liability agreement. And if you look that over before the next board meeting, we haven't changed it in a while, but it's an important document. It's executed whenever there's a community group utilizing the school facility. And then also the application, the use of school facilities application. That's not amended in these changes, but it's been a while. You want to look that over if you have any recommended changes for that. What has changed in the policy is that temporary restriction on community use of facilities. The 5030 has been relatively broad. You still have an application, you still have a waiver, so you have to be careful and utilization of school facilities, but it was rather broad by priority use of the groups, and that's mostly under B. The ultimate use is for students, but there's a priority use in this, and what this policy, what the changes do in this policy is that you can apply restrictions regarding, and they have to be temporary, but it's pursuant to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services being compliance with anything they're recommending for public schools. And that's never been in there before to be in compliance. It was more or less open for schools, but now you're restricted to, or have some temporary restrictions in compliance with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Resources. Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Motion.
No.
Pursuant to the provisions of the North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, parentheses A, parentheses 3, and 143-318.11, parentheses C, I move the Graham County Board of Education go into closed session to receive advice from Ms. Ellen Davis, attorney for Graham County Board of Education, which advice comes within the purview of the attorney-client privilege. The advice will be general legal advice about legal issues or legal matters. Pursuant to the provision of North Carolina Statute 143-318.11, parentheses C, I move the Graham County Board of Education go into closed session for the purpose of considering personnel matters as defined in and allowed by the North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, parentheses A, parentheses C, and North Carolina General Statute 115C-321.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? And we are now in closed session. Okay, we're back in open session. Action items, Mr. Moody, personnel.
Yes, for the 21st Century Program, I'd like to recommend for workers, the last 2 weeks of the 21st Century Camp, Brooke Haney and Nikki Moody.
Do I have a motion to approve for 21st Century Camp, Brooke Haney and Nikki Moody?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
I'd like to recommend for the Robbinsville Elementary K-6 elementary teacher position for the upcoming year, Crystal Hernandez to be hired for that.
Okay, K5.
K5, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Do I have a motion to approve Crystal Hernandez as a teacher for the K5 elementary?
Approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
For Robbinsville Middle School 8th grade English position, Jordan Mills.
Do I have a motion to approve Jordan Mills for 8th grade English?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Robbinsville High School English position, Amanda Orr.
Do I have a motion to approve Amanda Orr for high school English?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? You skipped the elementary section. Okay, good.
Thank you. Robbinsville Elementary School receptionist, Tiffany Mason Phillips.
Do I have a motion to approve as a receptionist at the elementary school, Tiffany Mason Phillips?
Approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, is that it?
I'll take Lester's offer to pay for the
Yeah. Lester.
I don't have any more checks.
Announcements. Next Board of Education meeting, it has to be special call and a date and time to be determined.
Your 2 dates are 9th and 20th.
Well, I got surgery on the 9th, that's pretty, Miss Knight thought it would be around the 20th, which is on a Tuesday, but I have to go back that day. There was no change in that. She said you have to post off that day.
calendar the 20th. I'm sorry, I thought you all voted on the, or decided the 20th.
No, we haven't
In your last
decided.
meeting. Okay.
No.
Did we vote on that?
In your last meeting,
I
you
didn't
decided.
post, but I don't know, so you-
No, we didn't bring that up.
maybe it's just discussed or something.
Yeah, we discussed it, but I don't think, we talked about not being able to have it the week before.
We can't do it the week before, it has to be the week of the 19th, so,
I can remote in.
you could, I could set up a conference phone in your list
Or whatever.
unless y'all want to have it on Wednesday or Thursday.
It's up to y'all, I don't care.
It is not,
She don't have a calendar. What is the 20th, was it? is it
20th on a Tuesday.
Yeah, okay.
When would you be back, you know? When's your point?
It's that way.
Would you be able to put that afternoon?
Where do you want that?
Yeah, it's a big turnaround, yeah.
And they're gonna fit me for, they're gonna be up there probably, if they make, I don't know if they'll fit first Wednesday, and I have to pass the next Wednesday. So I don't know how many.
What time's your appointment?
10:30.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be hard to remote in.
Yeah, well, it probably would be,
So the 21st would be Wednesday.
but I guess I need to.
Could you be here?
I can go here on the 21st.
Sure.
That's the reason.
Yeah, Wednesday. Are y'all comfortable with Wednesday, the 21st?
I think you're okay.
What time?
Calendar, yeah.
Special.
The special call meeting, we make it at 9 o'clock, like we did this one.
That's fine.
Let's do it. So July 21st, 9 o'clock. Do we have to vote on that? Or just have an agreement?
According to the boss, I can
We do have to vote. Do I have a motion to have a special call, Board of Education meeting on July the 21st, Wednesday at 9 a.m.? Do I have a motion to approve that?
True.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're meeting July 21st, Wednesday at 9 a.m.
I think that you need to clarify that you're unable to have your regularly scheduled meeting on, July.
June 4th, holiday.
Yeah. I would clarify that in the motion that you're not having your regularly scheduled meeting July.
Okay, what is that day?
The 6th?
The first Tuesday of the
It's the
month.
6th.
The 6th.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to clarify that we're not meeting on July the 6th because of the July the 4th weekend?
So, second.
Move, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. That takes care of that. All right.
Sign the contract.
Yeah, I'll hang around. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? All in favor?